all this now. Helena, when did we meet? It was up at Cranfield
Yes, yeah.
in
Mm,
20, 21 years ago, I guess.
gosh, it could well be, couldn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
absolutely. Yeah. So
was
I was instructing up there for what
it?
was the Britannia Flying Club, but then was in the process of morphing into Azure. So I was doing a lot of fixed wing training out of Cranfield, and at the same time I was their RT examiner. And I think your predecessor at Patriot said, would I come down and do some RT tests for his helicopter students? And they kept saying, "Oh, go on, you've got to have a go. You've got to have a go." And I kept saying no because I know I'll love it and it'll cost me a lot of money. And I hate being right.
And that's what happened. Exactly that, wasn't it?
That was exactly that. So I did my PPLH. Oh, well, whenever, I can't remember the date now. Yes. So
I meant to go and look it up, but that logbook's
yes,
very.
yeah, I should have looked before we started.
But I'm guessing it must have been a good sort of 20 or 10. You got it up there.
Got my helicopter logbook here.
Hey.
Oh, yeah. So what have we got here? 2007. Yep, 2007. There we go.
Yeah. Oh, it's not quite as long ago.
Not quite long ago. No. Well, that's when I finished it anyway.
Yeah. Oh, in that case, yeah, you must have started at about the 2000 then.
Yeah, 1990.
I have to say, she wasn't very good on the radio, if I'm quite honest.
The hang of that. Yeah.
No,
very nervous there.
I seem to remember, Helene, you were an extremely good student.
Oh, that you made me.
Very, very easy.
No, it was very, very good fun. Yeah.
Yeah, we kind of been in contact ever since, really, haven't we? Because we either on the radio, occasionally message on good old social media and everything else.
Or a cheery hello on 129550.
So, Helen, just remind me who you because you do. I don't think float about is probably the right term, but you operate different stations, don't you?
Correct. Yeah. So we're all supposed to be valid on at least one other sector, unless you're a sky god who does Heathrow approach, and then you can just do that and sit there all day, every day. So my sectors are Luton, Thames, which is London City, and the approaches to Biggin Hill and Southend a little bit as well, and Heathrow Special. So that's all the helicopter traffic through the London zone. And Amanda there is Luton and Stansted. Valid.
My sins.
Nah, done something bad.
And of course, it gets very confusing for some because Stansted isn't called Stansted, is it, when we're talking on the radio?
No, we're Essex Radar.
Yeah. And it throws, I know it's thrown some people. You must get loads of people call up saying Stansted Radar or Stansted Approach or something.
I get Luton Radio quite a lot.
Radio,
yeah. I obviously don't have radar. I just have radio. Apparently, we became Essex Radar because Luton got funny all those years ago because we were vectoring for 2 airports. Hence, it became Essex. And we've never gone back. We'll only ever refer to ourselves as Stansted if you're outbound or call 1362, and we'll be Stansted Director. That's the station.
I think it's the same philosophy with Thames, because we're not just we've got a city director and city radar as well if we're just doing that. But Thames covers Biggin and Southend as well. So I think that's why it's a more generic call sign.
I didn't know Thames covers Biggin and Southend on the as in the VFR arrivals, etc. Or
the IFR arrivals into Biggin and some of the VFR stuff that's transited the zone, and the Southend arrivals will kind of merge at a point sort of out near Clacton, really, and so we sort of feed them through the London City. Well, in normal circumstances, we would fit them into the London City stream and sort of peel them off towards Southend. Yeah, Thames before COVID happened was becoming a bit of a monster, really. It was
Was it?
And of course, then there was talk of Manston restarting again, and we would be doing that. And you think, yeah, in a minute.
I heard rumours of that, but I assume Manston aren't restarting, or is it just still on the back burner?
Oh no, I spoke to someone the other day who seemed, it was going to reopen. So yeah, whether they were still going for it, whether they'll reconsider, I don't know.
Okay. Oh wow.
Evening all.
Hey Jonathan, how you doing?
How are you?
So Jonathan, I
Sorry.
assume, don't you?
Sorry?
You remember Helena? Did she do your test? Radio test?
It's been a few years, but I'm sort of familiar. Yeah, sorry, I've got a terrible memory, but I'm sure it was you. Yeah, nice to meet you again, Helena.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hi.
And Helene, do you, whereabouts are you actually based? So when we're talking to you on the radio,
Yes, well, we're down on the south coast, really, near Hamble is the sort of the closest place. So, yeah, when we moved down from London, I don't know about you, Amanda, but it was sort of a little bit of a disconnect, because all day long you're talking about things around London and Luton and all that sort of thing, and then you sort of drive out and you're nowhere near it suddenly.
When you went into West Drayton, you could see which way Heathrow were landing, so you had a sense of what was going on the weather. Now being at Southampton, it can be absolutely hoovering it down there, but sunny in Essex and vice versa. So you just don't know. You don't get a feel for the weather and everything that's going on. So yeah, there is a disconnect.
Yeah, kind of got used to it now, but it was a bit weird to start with. I thought, that you weren't sort of having sort of started off at Luton Airport, and then you sort of a disconnect where radar moved into the centre at West Drayton. So that was one sort of one degree of separation, if you like, and then moving down here a few years later, it's sort of again you're sort of becoming more and more geographically removed from where you're talking about during the day, which is weird.
So what's happened at West Drayton? Are there no air traffic controllers left there?
No.
All right.
They're pulling it down to build houses, I think.
Yeah. No, either. No, that's not good. Well, it's
gone. We moved down 2007. I think about 2010 it was knocked down. I keep seeing things on Facebook, and it's now.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, I saw that the other day.
Yeah, very sad. I liked it there.
Yeah, I did.
You'd hear stuff go around at Heathrow, and you'd run out the fire escape and see who it was. It was brilliant.
How times change.
Yeah.
Indeed. Yes, it's funny when often, if we're talking to you on the radio, doing a Luton Zone transit, of course, in our heads, you're sitting on top of that little tower over there through the blue windows looking away.
No. The tower controllers are still actually at the airports for each of the London airports, but the radar is now all done in one big room.
And what area does that cover, Helena? Is that southern England?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, the room Amanda and I work in, is called terminal control. So we're looking after pretty much the London area. So you have approach controllers like us for each of the airports. So Heathrow, City, Stansted, Luton, and Gatwick. And then the other half of our room are our area controllers, who are taking our departures and working them up into the airway, or taking the traffic and sort of pointing it towards the appropriate airport on the way in.
Sure.
So, and then there's another side of the operation, which is area control, and they're working all the high level traffic that's either, transiting through. That's it, yeah.
Are you integrated with the military controllers at Hamble?
We do. We've got Northolt in our room as well now. So they're obviously looking after the little fillet at the top of the London zone when they're active. So for you guys, it might not. You might call up on special to get access to the London zone, but suddenly we'll just say no, we're not too interested. Northolt would like to speak to you. So. And they will sort of activate on and off intermittently during the day, depending on whether they've got any traffic.
Okay, so who would be controlling military flights in the vicinity of Elstree, for instance?
That would probably be Northolt.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Now, Helene, sometimes when we sorry, I was trying up to eat the pizza. Sometimes when we call and we want to go down the heli lanes, the students will say to us, "So what's the call sign?" Not for our call sign, but yours. You know, who are we addressing?
Heathrow radar would be the one.
It could be Heathrow radar. But of course, we sometimes hear Heathrow special. So what's that all about?
Yeah, it's kind of a little bit more colloquial. Technically, our call sign is Heathrow radar, and that's what we should use. But we are known as Special VFR, kind of historically now, because it was when the London control zone was Class A, and so VFR flight wasn't permitted in it, and everything had to operate Special VFR. So now that's Class D. It's not really the case anymore, and so it's kind of just a bit of a hangover from when it was a little bit more informal. We shouldn't really. We should say Heathrow radar. At the moment, because it's so quiet, the whole thing will be bandboxed with Thames most of the time. So you might hear the same person calling themselves Heathrow radar to you, but talking to something going into Biggin Hill as Thames radar. And that's just because we'll be working all 4 frequencies at the same time. Multitasking.
When you say bandbox, is that just a common term for operating multiple frequencies?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely that. Yeah. So obviously the sort of traffic levels we're looking at the moment, it's perfectly possible for one person to operate the whole of the Thames and Special VFR sector, often Stansted and Luton together for suitably qualified people. And then if it gets busier, this is the controller's first sort of line of defence, is to split the sector and give half or part of the task to someone else, so you don't have to worry about it. And with Thames, the first split would be to take Heathrow radar away, and then you'd have a dedicated person looking at the low level traffic, and someone else doing the IFR stuff into City Biggin.
And I mean, we'll see if anybody joining us tonight wants to ask some questions. If you're up for that, Helena.
Absolutely, yes, yeah.
What we probably spoke about this before, and probably with Amanda last time, but from a pilot calling you that's non-commercial, for instance, so private, whether they want a zone transit or not, any sort of useful piece of advice to give to them to make life easier, or to make it flow better, or to help you, to help them?
On that initial call, when you're just establishing two-way communication with us, it's really helpful if you let us know what you want at that stage of the game. So whether it's a zone transit, whether you're staying outside and you just want a basic or traffic service. And what's really quite flash is if you want a zone transit, tell us what service you want before you get to controlled airspace. So something like Luton radar, Golf Hotel Bravo Alpha Hotel, requesting zone transit and basic service. So then I know exactly what you need when you're outside controlled airspace, and that you actually want to come through as well. So that's really, really useful. And in that first call, we don't need anything else to start with.
I have a question.
Yeah.
At what point can you ask for a traffic service and not a basic service?
Whenever whenever you choose. It's meant to be the pilot's choice. So if you feel that that's the appropriate service for your flight conditions and what you're aiming to do, then feel free to ask. I will
say quite often if you hear ask for traffic. Oh, sorry, carry on.
No. There are occasions when we're just too busy to do it, though.
Yeah, I quite often hear that. Let's say you might get degraded service because of overworked controllers or whatever.
In which case,
but I thought there was a minimum height stipulation that you had to be for a traffic service to be effective.
Not really. If we're going to provide vectors on a traffic service, then you would have to be above the height limit that our unit has deemed terrain safe. But if we're not vectoring you, you're on your own navigation, we can provide it at any level as long as we've got a good radar contact on you, of course.
Okay.
If we are too busy, we might sort of to give you a traffic service, we've got two options. You might get a reduced traffic service, in which case all I'm saying to you is, yeah, I'm going to do my best, but I'm quite busy. I might not get every contact in good time, basically. We look at what we consider to be traffic would be within, we think it's going to pass within 3 miles or 3,000 feet of your aircraft. So there's a little bit of, you know, we might call something and it, in the end, it turns away and isn't a factor at all. But we would hope to get that information to you when there's still about 5 miles to run.
Okay.
So in a reduced traffic service situation, I can't guarantee that I'm going to achieve those sort of parameters.
Because I'm just thinking that clear, sunny, good flying days must be a nightmare for you, because millions of people are up there flying.
Oh yeah.
Imagine if you asked for a traffic service, you'd be, you know.
There are certain, again, workload isn't the only reason we can reduce it. It can be reduced because, and I always think this is a bit of a pity, when you're entering an area of high traffic density.
Yeah.
So just when you'd like to know about all the things around you, I'm saying, oh, I can't possibly tell you about all of those at once. Yeah. So that's another reason why you might end up on a reduced traffic service.
That is the irony of it, isn't it? On a day when there's barely any aircraft in the sky, the traffic service is amazing. You know, you're
gold plated.
10 miles away.
Yeah.
Yes.
But on the busy days, and this is the problem I think that Farnborough have had, because we always used to be called to Farnborough out of here, but often the response was, when you request a traffic services, they're just too busy, they can't give it. And so
I also think with Farnborough, I know some of the commercial clients I've spoken to, the helicopter guys, Farnborough won't provide any kind of traffic service below 1,500 feet. I think they've got a base cut off.
That's right,
So a lot of the time we'll get traffic called Luton, because we're more likely to give a service, even if they're slightly low, be little or no warning of traffic from below if they are quite low.
I mean, you probably know already from us, from the amount of times we call you now, Luton now is our kind of like default when we come out of here.
Well, yeah.
Because if it's quiet, you'll get a service from Farnborough, but as you rightly say, if you're below 1,500, they won't give it to you, a traffic service that is. The rest of the time, they're just way too busy. So we tend to now come straight to you guys first, hoping that you'll be good enough, and you nearly always provide that service, which is really nice. And Farnborough's now become the backup.
Really?
That coupled with half the time they're shut as well around lunchtime.
Like I say, with our reduced sort of IFR traffic loading, it's actually quite nice to be able to do it properly. I don't know what you think, Amanda, whereas just, you know, someone calls up for a traffic service, you go, no, far too busy, it's basic, and let me know when you're leaving. That's pretty much, you know. But it's been actually quite nice to be able to provide the services outside controlled airspace properly, if you like, and actually sort of do a bit more for the GA aircraft, because we're not completely swamped with IFR traffic at the moment, to say the least. Yeah.
Now, something that's interesting, I know I've gone slightly off, but it's an interesting subject. And when I have come across some, not so much the students, funny enough, but some self-flight hirers, when you're sort of doing check flights with them, they're quite reluctant to ask for a traffic service. And I'm trying to understand why. It feels like going back years where you were taught transponders, oh yeah, don't turn those on, keep them on standby, otherwise they'll see how high you are, see where you are. And it's, why don't you request a traffic service? Oh, I don't normally do that. Well, that's what it's there for.
Yeah, like I say, if you think it's any time that you think it would help, you know, there's no harm in asking. Like I say, if we're too busy, you might get a reduced traffic service. A couple of times, as we've said, you know, the traffic's very peaky. I've at the moment, so I initially took someone on a basic service. All my other traffic went away, so I had the chance to upgrade it sort of subsequently. So, you know, it's not although we can't sort of guarantee it's we'll try and do our best. If someone asks, we'll try and give them the service they've asked for. Not it's a deconfliction service, isn't it?
No, I've been able to do a deconfliction service thing twice, and that was my fault because I left controlled airspace. It was
my first response, because the base out over Kent is 2,500 feet. We get quite a few coming out of Biggin. asking for a deconfliction service, and my first question is, can you accept flight in Class A airspace? A firm, Roger, climb to 3,000 feet. Radar control, there we go.
Now, something that I'll be honest, I'm mildly confused about as well. That is, under traffic service, my understanding is that ideally we're supposed to maintain course and speed. Now, to sort of aid you, to help us, because if we're constantly changing altitudes, etc., it's quite tricky to keep it up, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. I mean, it's not too bad if you've got an altitude readout on your transponder, because obviously we can just, you know, even if on your first call you told me at 2,000 feet, it's quite easy for us to see if you've climbed. So that's not too difficult. The only situation, if we enter into an agreement where I've said I would like you to maintain less than, or you know, below a certain level, or on a particular heading band, something like that. But the thing with agreements is, because they only apply outside controlled airspace, pilots have the right to refuse. So it's more like, are you able to do this? And if you can't, then so be it. We'll have to find, you know, another solution to whatever it is I'm trying to get around. Farnborough use them quite a lot for people leaving the control zone to the south, the London control zone, that is, so that they can ensure that things remain deconflicted from their ILS traffic out to the east of Farnborough. Yeah. But the key thing is, with an agreement, is, as I say, you have the right to refuse. We accept that. But otherwise, you're at liberty to pretty much, even if you're on a traffic service, you can pretty much do what you want. It can make passing traffic information a bit difficult. I was trying to tell someone about traffic that was in his 1 o'clock the other day, and as he was sort of turning, I was like, well, it's now about 2. By the time I'd finished speaking, I was like, well, it's 2 o'clock now. So
that, I don't think that was me, but it literally exactly the same thing happened.
No.
Last week. Yeah, I was in an orbit, and somebody's trying to tell me about the traffic. I'm thinking, yeah, and we're just going round and round. So,
okay. Personally, if I can see someone's sort of in a tight turn, then I would use more geographic. So there's traffic to the southeast of you by 2 miles, rather than try and use a clock code, which is obviously going to change as you manoeuvre. So there are ways, and we would see if you were orbiting. So
yeah, that's interesting. So on a traffic service, we don't need to request a change of altitude or anything. It's just it might be useful if we just mention it, or not at all.
Yeah, you can, if it's quiet enough, you know. But we are looking at your altitude readout, so we'll be able to see that has happened anyway. And unless we've actually agreed a particular course of action between us and had that conversation, it would either be phrased something like, for coordination, are you able to maintain not above 3,000 feet? Or, you know, or for deconfliction against something else, are you able to? So you'll be asked a question which you can obviously say no to.
Yeah, I've heard that on the odd occasion. Because going back some time, I do remember, and nobody here tonight or on one of the frequencies you're but getting a traffic service, and the student actually got barked at a little bit by the air traffic controller because notified.
It was me, Paul.
Was it you, John? Yeah.
Yeah, I got. I was told, you know, ask altitude, and I reported that I was at 2,000 feet, but then dropped down to 1,800 feet from 2,000. This was going. This would have been Farnborough, going up towards Duxford.
It is. Don't worry. Don't go, John. Yeah, and that's right.
No. So yeah, they basically turned around to me and said, "Can you maintain your height?" And I came back and said, "Yeah, sorry, I apologise. I've dropped, 200 feet. I'm sort of new to this." Of which then I came back and asked Paul, and Paul said, "It's been a bit tight with you on a helicopter. To be fair, he shouldn't be asking you, but you should be able to maintain within 100 feet, obviously for your PPL." But Yeah, up thermals, down thermals, that sort of thing.
Well, I don't think I'd have got particularly upset about that. I don't know about you, Amanda.
Probably wouldn't have noticed. I'm always I'm always monitoring things. So even if you have changed your altitude, I'm still looking at you. I'm still doing a scan. But I know Farnborough have had to go at a couple of other people.
To be fair, he was a man. He was a man. One of them men things.
See, we love everybody.
But I mean, that's the whole idea of it, Soka, is you have the autonomy and the freedom to operate. You've got to try and maintain VMC. So we're not going to get overly prescriptive outside controlled airspace because, you know, you can pretty much do what you want. That's the point of it.
Going right back to that original question that I asked about, is there anything that we can do that makes life you when we're first doing that call? And it's obviously, like you say, just getting the right information across first, not telling you our life story. But now, I'll just mention to everybody that a lot of the books that you study, Helena has actually put a lot of input into into the various RT manuals, etc. Yeah. Of course, we can.
Buy your copy from.
We can test on it. If I remember rightly, in CAT 413, on the initial call, we're not actually meant to say why we're calling, are we?
Sorry. How do you mean? What we're calling?
On that initial call to Luton Radar, Golf Foxtrot Papa Echo Hotel. Are we just meant to do that? Just get your attention first, and then you'd say partial.
So it was a recent change. It is in the CAT 413 now. So, and brief intentions as to what you want.
Yeah.
So they do say, you know, zone transit, the type of at SOCA, so be it basic or traffic service. And if you want both, let us know. Yeah.
That's relatively recent. That's changed, isn't it?
It's fairly recent. Yeah.
Now, going right back in the day when Helena was giving me advice on radio, she said, "No, when you first call, just tell them why you're calling." Yeah, but Helena, that's not how it's done, is it? She said, "No, just tell them why."
They came around to my way of thinking in the end.
It took a number of years.
But no, it's because then we can sort of decide. You know, someone wants to go through the zone, we can already start to plan. You know, what have we got coming in? How's that going to work? Is there requests? You know, their sort of track, does that look sensible? So even if we haven't got round to dealing with your flight details yet, we're still sort of formulating a vague plan as to how you're going to affect our little world.
Yep. Clearly, like I said, that must have been 17 years ago you told me that little tip.
Yeah, they changed it, maybe about 3 or 4 years ago. It was in one of the 413 updates, yeah. So.
Everybody's read, haven't we? Yeah, everybody's nodding. Good, just checking.
If you ever suffer from insomnia, it's a good way to.
I went to print off the CAT 413 once, and then I looked how many pages it was. I thought, yeah, perhaps I won't do that.
Yeah.
Yes, it's rather a few pages. Yeah, and then the other useful tip that you've taught me in the past, and we teach our students is, you don't need to know our life story when we're passing a message, do you?
No. I use the and when I'm sort of teaching RT, I use the mnemonic ADPAR. So you've got 3 things that are not going to change for any given flight. So aircraft call sign and type. So it might be, you know, so we do one thing we've got at TC and at Farnborough now is electronic strips. And although I think we've all become a lot more proficient, it was still a lot easier with a biro and a bit quicker with a biro, to be honest. And the boxes for the letters are really quite small, so we've got to be quite precise. So it's always useful to say again your full call sign to us, just so that we can check we've tapped it out correctly. And we would then want to know what type of aircraft or helicopter you are. Particularly on Heathrow Special, this again helps with our sort of immediate planning, because helicopters can do things that fixed wings can't twin versions can do things that single engines can't. So it's sort of already the sort of cogs are turning as to what we can what we're going to be able to do. And then the second part of add is your departure aerodrome and your destination aerodrome. So the reason we want to know where you've come from is because if you disappear or anything untoward happens, that's keeping your booking, the departure aerodrome will keep your booking out details. So if we need to get hold of the supplementary information, how many people were on board, how much fuel you were taking, what you were intending to do, we know which airport to phone to get that. And again, destination is basically for my planning again, because I'm now getting an idea of how you're going to, as I say, affect my little world and what you're going to want to do. So they're the three things that aren't going to change for any given flight. And then the path is your present position. So where am I to look for you on the radar? Altitude, so that I can cross-check that your mode Charlie or altitude readout is correct. And the R is for request. So it may be that you just told me, you just repeat what you told me when we were establishing two-way communication. But bear in mind, there might have been a bit of a gap, and you know, my memory's, you know, as I get older, my memory's failing. So you might need to remind me what it was you wanted to do. So add path. It does become second nature. The more, those of you with sort of more experience, it really does become second nature after a while. But the mnemonic sort of just helps to keep things in a nice set order so that you don't forget things. And it almost fits with our electronics, which would have been sensible to tie up. But anyway, that's another issue. But it just means we know what's whereabouts we're looking on the screen next with the information we're expecting to hear. So
good, and you'll be pleased to know, Helene, that is exactly what we teach, because I got that from you, ADPAR. You talked as well.
yeah, there we go.
As far as finding an aircraft on your screen, is it possible on the helicopter to blip the transponder to give it a ping to help on the radar?
Yeah, the next thing we would do is probably go about identifying you, so giving you a squawk, in which case you would ping up sort of controllers. Each airport has their own little set of squawks, so you recognise yours immediately. So it's sort of that would get our attention. We might ask you to ident if we're having trouble locating you, so that would cause your target, a little ring to appear around your target and flash a few times. So again, quite attention getting. And of course, with Mode Sierra now, we don't need any of that really. We can just interrogate the blip. We can put the cursor over your target, and we would get the flight detail just in a little inset box on the radar, so we can actually see. And I'll often do that and say, "Oh, who's that? Oh, look, there's Paul." Yeah.
You can get quite a lot of information from the Mode Sierra, can't you?
Absolutely, yeah. Depending on the aircraft equipment, but certainly if the call time's been put in correctly, I don't know about you, but there's a few that haven't been.
I've seen it.
We can see ground speeds, rates of climb and descent, what pressure setting you've got. What else is there?
Selective flight level.
Selective flight level, yeah. So there is quite a lot of information that we can get just without even asking you for it.
Yeah. Can you also get some of the aircraft registration, not the registration itself, but registration information about the aircraft, who it's registered to, and various other bits?
No. I think you can on some commercial available. I think Flight Radar 24. If you subscribe to that, you can get loads of information. But to be honest, in an operations setting, we don't need.
You don't need
that. Yeah, because I think it does contain sort of, you know, the for the airliners, certainly the route and the actual registration and the flight number, but we don't really need all that. So
No.
that stuff. So it's
Just curious how much you can see about us: telephone numbers, addresses, the whole lot.
that's right. Yes. yes.
We know everything.
What, yeah. What's the in-flight catering this evening? That kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And then so we've done our ad par. We've not spent 30 seconds on the radio telling you every turning detail of our route, etc. And what's the magic words that we're waiting for as the pilot to hear from you before we go busting into that controlled airspace?
That's right. If you're wanting a zone transit, you've got, as Paul says, you've got to wait for the magic words, which will either be cleared to enter, cleared to transit, but you know it is quite a specific piece of phraseology that you're waiting for before crossing that imaginary line in the sky and spoiling everyone's day.
Yeah. But and of course, in the past, I'm hopefully with the sort of, I don't know, the last decade of pilots, they're not scared to talk to Luton radar or Essex radar or these sorts of places, or even Farnborough radar. There used to be a phobia of calling these places, and I don't really know why. It's a bit like the transponder being left on standby.
Yeah. No, I don't know why. It's there has been sort of a campaign to encourage people to call, because not sort of recently, but over the last few years, because it's one of those things. If people don't interact with controlled airspace, it just gets worse. I think you don't practice it, so if you have to do it for weather one day, you haven't got any experience to fall back on. And yeah, so, and I think also the sort of going back sort of 20 or so years ago, you had sort of quite a lot of ex-military controllers who sort of didn't really have very much time for GA. I think you've got a few more sensitive faces around these days.
I'll say it's quite rare when flying around, certainly the south of the UK, it's quite rare to actually hear a grumpy controller.
Yeah.
Very friendly, accommodating. Or say 20 years ago.
Not because they're all drunk all the time. No.
Back a few years, and yeah, it was complete opposite. It wasn't grumpy.
Absolutely, yes, yeah. There's and yeah, I don't know whether it's a sort of a generational shift or something, but there's certainly far fewer people who are going, GA than there were when I started work. So
there's a couple of airports up north that are a bit like that, I'll be honest.
Yeah, are there? Yes, yeah.
We had one at Elstree, didn't we, Paul?
Oh yeah, they're fast. I'm guessing one of your pet hates is probably, both you and Amanda, an aircraft not talking to you, not squawking a listening squawk, which we can come to in a minute, just skimming around the edge of the zone, literally just bouncing off the corner of it. Especially that lovely curve around Luton.
That's right, yes, yeah. Which is sort of the side of Stevenage as well, isn't it? So it's nice and easy for people to follow. Hasn't happened to me on Luton, but I've had aircraft actually refuse to take the ILS at London City because someone was doing just that right on the edge of the control area, as it is around the very eastern edge of London City. So he was at 2,400 feet, quite legitimately outside controlled airspace, but only just. And the traffic is at 3,000 feet, preparing to go down the steep glide path. And I've had a couple of them said, no, we're not doing it with him here. So we'll be vectored round and try again. Yeah. So a few years ago, it might still be going, I don't know. Did anyone see the Gasco Take 2 campaign? It's kind of designed to limit inadvertent zone infringements. And the advice is, if you're going around a zone laterally, take 2 miles from the zone boundary. Or if you're flying below controlled airspace, take 200 feet and just give yourself a little margin of error for, gusts, weather avoidance, whatever. So it was quite a prominent campaign a little while ago, but I think it's still sort of sound advice to, hugging the yeah, hugging the boundaries is a little bit annoying. And from a pilot's point of view, it doesn't take a big distraction for you to muck it up. Suddenly you're in controlled airspace, and then we have the situation where you've infringed the zone, so you've entered controlled airspace without the required permission, and we then have to launch into all sorts of unnecessary paperwork, don't we? And it spoils the day, and you know, it's just best avoid it, really. I think I can speak for everyone. We don't like paperwork.
Enough of it already. And yeah, operating Essex, if just literally hugging the more southern TMZ area, etc., that must be a bit of a pain as well, because that's directly in line with the arrivals and departures, isn't it?
That's yours, Amanda.
Yes, because now with the TMZ, people will get airborne thinking that their transponders are on. If they're not on, they may not necessarily be aware that they've either got a technical fault, but we still have to avoid it. So it's not just traffic inside controlled airspace, it's the traffic outside controlled airspace that doesn't have the requirements of the TMZ. So mode Alpha, mode Charlie, mode Sierra.
Now the two TMZs, the transponder mandatory zones, are just under the north and southern stubs of Stansted.
Yes.
Again, I get asked this question all the time. Are we, are people supposed to request to fly through the TMZ? Is it a case of nope, as long as you've got a transponder and it's squawking and working, you can just fly through? Or is there some sort of an approval? Because you hear words sometimes from Farnborough that's approved. You hear somebody saying they want to do a TMZ.
Transit approved, yeah. That's if they don't have the required mode Alpha, mode Charlie. You're supposed to have mode Sierra as well. But most of the time, if we just see mode Alpha and mode Charlie and you're outside controlled airspace, is Essex, we'll disregard that, because anything wanting TMZ transit when Farnborough Lars is open, to request it from Farnborough Lars rather than from Essex Radar, because we're normally too busy to deal with that, or we were.
So the TMZ, to pass underneath that stub through the TMZ, that is a request, is it?
If you don't have mode Alpha and mode Charlie or mode Sierra, then yes.
And if you have those, you can just fly through without talking to anybody. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was my understanding, but it was one of those areas I thought, I just need to try and clarify that. And I've tried, not very hard, but I have tried to look up, and I can't find that.
I don't know. I only know because it's in the Stansted section of the Maths Part 2. I don't know where it gets published, if it would have been put in the Stansted section of the AIP. I don't know if it would be in there.
To be fair, it might be in there, but it's if you look up information when training about TMZs, etc.
Yeah.
Really, or it never used to anyway. They might have changed it, but it wasn't clear as to whether you needed approval or not, or what. It just, and so it's only when listening on the radio you hear sometimes people are requesting it, and it sounds like they're trying to get a clearance, even when they've got mode Charlie, for instance. So there's all that kind of slight grey areas to whether you could just fly straight through or not. but that's pretty much my understanding. As long as you've got Charlie Sierra, then you can just fly through there without any approval, etc.
Absolutely fine. We can see you. Yeah, we assume that your mode Charlie is correct. Because you're outside controlled airspace, and again, a lot of time, as Lena said, we can click on you and we get all your information up, including the QNH you're flying on. I know we've had problems with a discrepancy when flight information have been working stuff below the TMZ, and they've put them on the regional QNH. And of course, they're not above 1,500 feet, but they're on a different pressure setting. So that's then throwing them up into our airspace. We then have to take avoiding action because it's unknown traffic. If we're 04 and you're going through the southerly or below the southerly TMZ, you suddenly appear at 1,600 feet. Avoiding action, break everybody off, ring flight information. We're not allowed to give an instruction to flight information to give to the aircraft. They can't do that because they are just flight information. They're not radar controllers. They have to give us the aircraft. We then have to identify it. Then once it's identified, you can validate and verify mode Alpha, mode Charlie, that's the aircraft. Then you can treat them. Are you happy to maintain VMC? So then you can go VFR, IFR separation, which is called traffic. Until that point, you deem it as unknown. and it's 3 miles or 3,000 feet that we have to try and achieve.
With the separation, yeah. I suppose by which time they've already cleared the TMZ by now and the stub.
A lot of the time, even if they come in for 1 or 2 sweeps, I had something out of North Weald that climbed a little bit early. But it was in for 1 sweep on the nose of a Ryanair that I had coming downwind right. But thankfully, the Ryanair was about 5,000 feet above. So I didn't have to take avoiding action any closer, and it would have been breaking off to the right, and anybody else behind would then have to hold off, because you're having to resequence number 1, and everybody behind, it has that knock-on effect. And a lot of time people say, well, it only came in for 20 seconds. It only takes 2 or 3 for everything to be thrown into absolute chaos. It doesn't take much.
So
I don't know if you're interested. I've just got a video that Nats have produced about infringements. It only runs for a couple of minutes. I don't know if you're interested in,
Yeah.
but it does highlight the problems that Amanda's just been saying, in that we have to break our traffic off. It costs the airline a lot of money. Our plans just go out the window, so your controlling them becomes very reactive. So that's sort of one element in our Swiss cheese model, if you like, is that we're now we're not planning and being proactive about what's going to happen. We're now sort of reacting to it. So in the first one, it is a Stansted one, and you can see how far the traffic breaks off. Am I okay to
wasn't me.
share in? Let's see if it works. That needs to go bigger. Work. Is that there?
Yeah.
So it just kind of, and the second one, he has a go at Stansted, and then Heathrow, I think, is the second one.
Yeah.
I'll play you a lovely tune in a minute, I think. So the little red one is our chap that's going to infringe, obviously. And also the departures were stopped, so we're not just getting issues in the air, it's issues on the ground as well.
And if traffic's got a slot and it misses that slot and has to reapply for another slot.
Yes. I bet that causes fun in the air, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Through Heathrow, past Denham by the looks of it. And out the other side, where's that? That's about Farnborough area, isn't it?
Yeah.
White Waltham, that
Yeah.
kind of area.
And heading off down the southwest somewhere.
And bear in mind with Heathrow, it's not the few we see diverted off here. There could be 15 in the downwinds behind.
Yeah.
The
We're tracking the outer holds as well.
knock-on effect must be tremendous.
Just wonder what went through his mind about two. Oh, look, there's a big
Oh,
airport.
2 runways.
Yeah. And then there's a scurry northbound quick out the zone, isn't there?
That's it, yeah.
Yeah.
No, some good advice. So yeah, use your transponder, and the listening squawks are really good.
Yeah, so that was going to lead me on. I mean, normally we teach our students, if you're anywhere near, certainly around here, that's for sure, if you're anywhere near Luton or Stansted, just make sure you're either already getting a radar service maybe from Farnborough, but otherwise just call Luton or Stansted. And don't be afraid, you know, they're not going to bite, they're not going to have a go at you.
Only people like us who are not that scary.
They're not too scary. Certainly for training purposes, I try to encourage that actual use of the radio. But once you've passed your test, I tend to sort of then start talking about listening squawks. And mostly because we try to teach our students always be in radio contact with somebody, just in case something goes wrong, because you've already got the radio contact in. You can do a quick whether it's a pan or a mayday call, but they know about you already. But of course, yeah, so what's a listening squawk? Because I don't think everybody always understands exactly what that is, or the process, or what it means even.
So what we've got is pretty much, I think now every piece of controlled airspace in the country now, every controlled zone, I should say rather, has a particular squawk associated with a particular frequency. I'm just going to share in again if it will work. Oh, go away! I don't want to do that anymore. Hold on, where's the stop share thing gone? Ah. Oh well, I'm just going to run through this.
I'll go grab one. I've got one. Scott.
Yeah, that's the Take Two campaign that I was saying. So there we've got. Are you able to see that? Has that come through? Because my machine is doing something a bit strange now. No, it's not doing it, is it? Hold on. Frequency monitoring codes. Let's try doing it this way round. I have to.
I think you do it literally. Look.
There we go. There we go. I got it. I forgot I have to do the share in the PowerPoint first and then put it up. So as you can see, each little area here has a squawk and a frequency associated with it. So up here at Luton, we've got 0013, Stansted, we've got 7013, and associated with that is 120.625, and associated with 13 is 129550. So if I see 0013, I know that that traffic is listening out on my frequency, because the way it works is you decide, oh, I'm going to be flying quite close to Luton. So I'll set the appropriate squawk and I'll select the appropriate frequency and listen out. So you don't have to call anyone. You just have to be on that frequency listening out, so you'll hear everything else that's going on. As the controller, I know that I can call you if I need to. A couple of times I've seen things coming up towards the southern zone boundary. They might have been out of Elstree. I'm not going to say anything else. But I can either sort of do a generic call, sort of traffic north of St Albans, tracking north at 2,000 feet. You know, the controlled airspace boundary is 2 miles ahead of you, so just a left or right turn. Or I can interrogate the mode Sierra, as we've just said, and actually address it to the particular aircraft. So I can come through and say, you know, Golf Alpha, Bravo Charlie Delta, you're approaching the edge of controlled airspace, suggest a turn to the right. Sometimes they come back and say, yeah, I know I was going to, which is fine. But hopefully by sort of interjecting in that manner, we've managed to avoid an infringement just by knowing that I can call. It gives us that bit more confidence knowing that if something is working close to the controlled airspace boundary, that we could get in touch with you if we had to.
I had one a few weeks ago coming from sort of a Duxford direction, heading towards where Pantanger used to be, and they were bearing down the Luton zone. I'd already put the little box around it. I had the call sign. I was ready just as he called me, turning away. And he said, Luton, this is Golf whoever. I said, I had his call sign, so I know who you are. I said, pass the message. He said, I think I might have just come in. I said, I think you'll find you've made it by a whisker. I said, I was ready to call you, but you're absolutely fine. He just went, phew, on the RT. So he kind of knew I was ready, but if he'd come any closer, then I would have got in, because I don't want them to infringe, because as Helena said, it's paperwork and you don't want that against you. It's one of those things. So by the virtues of the listening squawk and mode Sierra, I was ready, he was listening out, all worked out well.
Yeah, nip it in the bud. So as the pilot, you decide, oh, I'm going to be operating, it's a good decision call when you're going between Luton and Stansted, which side, you know, towards the west side, you might think, oh, I'll listen into Luton, towards the east side, oh, I'll listen into the Stansted. But we're sitting next to each other, so we would, you know, either would really be okay. Amanda could always shout over and say, "Oh, you're 0013. Could you give him a call?" So we could do it like that. Although we're now socially distant, so she'd have to shout at me quite loudly now. We used to be next to each other, and I was like, "Oh, wait, semaphore, maybe we can
Yeah, get an Aldous lamp."
yeah.
And are you finding that more and more pilots are using listening squawks?
Yes, yeah, and they're really good. Like I say, we've stopped so many infringements. And then, you know, so you don't have to actually interact with us unless it's, you know, you're not getting a particular service, you're just listening out. And once you've cleared the area, you can just go back to a conspicuity squawk and change en route. You don't have to say goodbye or anything like that. So one change recently, I'm sure Paul's picked up on it, the phraseology for going back to 7,000 as was is now we're saying squawk conspicuity, which is fun because it's a really difficult word for people to say. Even some of the controllers have difficulties with it.
I can't get hit, yeah.
Now, people keep asking me. I think I know the answer, but I'm not going to say it. But why? Why has it gone from squawk 7,000 to squawk conspicuity?
Very good. Yeah, because we've now got two sort of different conspicuity squawks depending on the flight rules under which you're operating. Yep. So 7,000 still remains the VFR conspicuity squawk, and now 2,000 is the conspicuity squawk if you're IFR. So obviously we don't know what flight rules you're operating under, so we just say go back to. And also there's more and more special operations with their own, like the pipelines have their own squawk, the medivacs have their own squawk. So it just saves a lot of, it just gives it the pilot the choice, because you've got the 7010 if you're joining a circuit in some places as well. So it just means we're not prescribing that you should do that. It's the pilot's choice.
Yeah, it's almost like just to avoid just a technicality, isn't it? But
really, yeah.
I assume somewhere along the lines, somewhere somebody's then gone squawk 7,000 when they should have been squawking maybe 2,000 or.
Correct. Yeah. And that was sort of synchronous with Farnborough airspace because they can have VFR in Class E airspace now. So they wanted the symbols changed so that they knew the difference, whether the flight rules that someone was operating under that became important to them. Yeah.
Is that why everything changed to a V? Because I went
to
everything changed. 7,000 had disappeared. And now if you're squawking 7,000, you're just a little V on my radar display with the Mode Charlie readout. I thought, where's everybody gone?
Yeah.
And I'm automatically assuming the V as in just VFR.
Yeah.
And I presume that there's been an I for IFR. I've not seen one, I don't think. Have you seen one?
No.
No. So I presume it would. Maybe next time Paul's on frequency, we'll just ask him to swap 2,000 and see what happens.
It does, yeah.
See what happens. Has anybody got a question for Helena at the moment? Because I'm hogging the floor at the moment. Sorry.
So
I have a question.
Go for it.
Suzanne. Hi, Suzanne here. So I had a question about the squawk conspicuity squawk. How do you say it?
Good effort. Yeah.
Yeah, the thing, right? The squawk thing, and the listening squawk. Is it like are these things specific to UK or are they being implemented internationally?
The frequency monitoring codes are UK specific. I haven't heard of anyone. 7,000 definitely the conspicuity squawk for VFR in the EU. But I think 2,000 used to be when you were entering a new FIR where you haven't been using your transponder before. So I think that's just a UK thing that we've repurposed to be an IFR conspicuity squawk now.
Okay, thanks.
I remember the
And
early
also America, I think it's still 1200. So it does vary.
crossing to France. It used to be Squawk 2000 crossing the
That's
FI,
it.
didn't it? But that disappeared somewhere.
Yeah, and I think I think we've grabbed that to mean IFR conspicuity outside controlled airspace kind of thing now.
Oh, Valley.
Yeah, I had a question. I'm still a student. And I did obviously a few mistakes from calling the radar radio, as well as punching the wrong squawk, and then realizing after 3 seconds that is wrong, and then asking 3 times to be repeated, and then traffic was coming, and then asking again for the QNH, and I was like, I'm a total mess. How many mistakes I did? How bad is, or how much of a trouble is when I insert the wrong squawk and it takes me like 5 seconds to realize that, oh,
That's not too much of an issue, particularly at the moment when there's the traffic's light. If the frequency is really busy, then little things like that can start to build up. Right? Yeah, it's if we have to go back and say negative, squawk 4672, and or whatever it is when when RT time is precious. But at the moment, I think we just go back and say, oh, reset.
Another question. When you ask us to squawk conspicuity, I'm still repeating squawk conspicuity and then I'm pressing?
Yeah. Although a lot of people have taken, I think, as a tactic to avoid saying the word conspicuity, a lot of people have taken to saying, okay, I'm squawking 7,000 now. So you can get around it that way. That's perfectly okay. Tell me what you're going to do. Yeah.
It is funny hearing people attempt to say conspicuity, isn't it? When you're flying an aircraft, concentrate on everything else. Yeah.
You hear some of the controllers trying to say it. Mike Cox can't say it at all. It's really
yeah,
quite
the
funny.
thing you stumble on, yeah.
Yeah, I stand behind him going, continuity, and trying to trying to make it worse for him.
And your colleagues laughing at you don't help.
No.
So yeah.
I find up when teaching the students, they say, "Guys, how do you read all that lot back?" I say, "Well, just do what you can, and then just ask for the last bit."
Yeah,
so repeat,
absolutely. Yeah.
repeat what you can, and the bit you couldn't remember, just ask them to say that part again. Yeah.
Absolutely. And if it's something important like a level or some other sort of restriction that we want you to follow, if you haven't read it back, we'll chase you up for it, and confirm that's VFR in the Luton zone or not above 2,000 feet. And we'll, which again, in the sort of traffic levels we're in at the moment is fine. It can get a bit wearisome if we're having to do it when the frequency is busy, but it's but particularly if it's a mandatory readback item, we will make sure we get the readback from it.
Especially if it's the runway numbers, you give by the 2.5 threshold. Roger, no, I need you to read it back. And then they go for the climb out negative, keep the runway on your left or the runway on your right. Sometimes you just have to really pin it down a little bit more. But I've had people try and go for the climb out before, and you have to go, no, other end. Just
Yeah, you do make it nice and plain and simple. Sometimes say, and keep it on your left at all times. Yeah.
And you do, but you don't want to sound condescending. But it's one less thing to think about. It's if you keep it on the left, can't go wrong. Brilliant stuff.
Easy then, isn't it? Yep, that's a nice easy one. Who else has got a question?
Yeah, I have. Sorry, Helena. Going back to the infringement, or Amanda. Hiya.
Hi, Sue.
What readback do you want from me if you've said, I don't know, I'm getting like 1 nautical mile too close towards infringement? Roger doesn't mean anything. You don't really know what I've understood. So what do you want me to say?
You could, sorry, I'm turning, turning west, turning east, doing a 180, turning onto a heading, you could tell us as well. Yeah.
Okay.
So if you're just going to sort of, you know, right, I'm turning south now, and we would probably say, thank you, that's great. Yeah.
Brilliant, thanks.
If at any point you're not sure of your position, just say that, at which point we can then give you a squawk, identify you. So if you do come in, we can clear you into controlled airspace rather than you infringe and it all starts to snowball.
Right.
So if you're ever in any doubt, go, well, I'm not entirely sure where I am. Give you a squawk, you're identified, you're here, and we'll help you get back to where you're going.
Brilliant. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Whether I know it's not strictly speaking the good old Cat 413 RT procedures, but we've often taught, look, if you're not sure, just use plain English, as few words as possible, but just plain English.
Absolutely. And that's, you know, we get the same advice. There are some times when, yes, there's a nice standard phrase you can use, and that obviously hasn't conveyed what we're trying to get across. So you know, you try a different way, and then sometimes, as the man says, keep it on your left. You know, sometimes it just has to be, you know, plain language. You know, do not do that.
Stop it.
Stop it. Yes.
I got a bit of plain English when I went through my first, well, I went to Western and I was speaking to Luton. By the way, Luton radar is much nicer than Farnborough. They
like that. You can come anytime.
We're going to make that into a t-shirt.
Yes. We'll get a poster made, put up by Luton. Brilliant. Like,
Luton, we're much nicer than Farnborough.
Luton dated the squawk code very nicely, like because I said student pilot and it was like 5, 0. I was like, finally I can punch. But I said student pilot and I identified myself, and the next message was, do not enter the controller space. Do not enter the controller space. So 2 times or 3 times, something along those lines. I was like, I didn't even say what I want to do. I'm not entering. I think they were busy and they told me to wait. And I was like, okay, like
that's not.
I'm flying. I'm waiting.
That's a good point as well. If you are flying as a student, let us know, because we'll obviously either say things more slowly or be even more happy. We're always happy to repeat ourselves rather than someone misunderstand. But you know, we'll be even more gentle with you if you.
I reckon they must have, as soon as you do the student call sign on this occasion, they've seen L plates and thought, right, stay out of the way.
Bring out the cotton wool, yeah. But a lot of the time if we're busy and someone calls up, whether it be student or not, requesting transit, the go-to will be squawk this, remain outside controlled airspace. That's our go-to, just to make it plain that you can't come in yet, remain outside, we will call you.
Right.
It's kind of covering ourselves to a certain extent, so there's no ambiguity there.
Yeah, there are certain things that we do that basically Nat's lawyers like us to sort of behave in that way, and that's sometimes we'll just say things that cover our own arse, basically.
Yeah.
And that's one of them. You know, well, I didn't steer him into the control zone.
Yeah, I said remain outside. It's on the tapes. Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of those little things that like I say, achieve what Nat's lawyers like us to do. No Nat's lawyers listening in, are
Cool,
Anybody got else a question for Lena?
What is the penalty if you fly in to a controlled zone?
A good one.
Good one. Yeah, it varies. I mean, the CAA do prosecute these things, and there was a good story about the chap who infringed Luton 4 times. Were you involved in that one, Amanda?
No, mine was the one where he did Stansted and Luton.
Oh, right. So there's this chap. I've just got the story as part of my the FI slideshow that I've been sharing with you intermittently. So he infringed Luton airspace 4 times on the same day. They stopped departures twice. So, but long story short, it was going Wellesbourne to Duxford and back. So, but he ended up being fined £7,576, which is a very odd number, isn't it? But anyway, and ordered to pay £750 costs. So that was kind of the worst case of
I'm
prosecution.
fully paid up now, though. It's okay. I've paid it.
Yeah. You paid it now.
I can't remember how much my guy was fined. I went to the magistrate's court.
Oh, did you? Yeah.
I sat in the back with a few people, my husband. The strange thing was, I recognised the chair magistrate. I'm sat in the back. He's got a Nats lanyard on. I'm thinking, this was in Chelsea.
No, this guy's not going to get off.
I recognised it, but because I wasn't the prosecution, it was the CAA. He spoke up and said, in a previous life, I taught aviation law. Do you remember Peter Rose?
Oh, name rings a bell.
Pedro,
yeah.
It's him. And so, prosecution, we've never met. Are you happy for me to sit on this case? Yes. I won't use the name of the pilot involved, but I remember it very well. Are you happy for me to sit on this case, considering my background? I thought he was going to say no. He said yes. As it was, he was fined, I think it was just short of 5,000. I think it was a maximum penalty of 2,500 for each zone because he entered the Stansted zone. I think he went to Luton's twice.
Oh, really?
He's
Yeah.
taught to aviate, navigate, communicate, at which point the magistrate said, you've done none of those. You're flying around the busiest bit of airspace in the UK and you weren't talking to anybody. He came in under the 2-2 approach, well, 2-2 approach now, came in that way, went north of Stansted. I had a helicopter lift within the zone and I said, can you go and have a look? And he did. And I got the registration. They went on GM4. I've got a picture of this aircraft before it's even in airspace. Wasn't transponding, no mode alpha, no mode Charlie. Now I know he's real. He then went to the Luton zone. Of course, they started breaking traffic off. But he said I was low level. How do you think the aircraft land? You've gone under final approach. It was, yeah. And then when they told him how much it was, he said, shall I go and get the cash out?
Oh, wow. Yeah.
It was that day I realised why they screw down chairs in magistrates' courts. I was so angry. He didn't say sorry. He said it was my fault. I don't think he realised I was sat at the back.
Oh my goodness.
Brilliant.
But these
I thought I read a few years ago about a pilot who infringed airspace where the red arrows were flying.
Oh yeah, the guy out Cranshanger. Yeah.
Didn't he get jailed or something?
I
His
can't
licensed helicopter
remember.
pilot.
But yeah, no, that was I was working that day. That was really messy. They were displaying, and it was just like a bomb burst of everyone coming out. But what I've just shared in there is just sort of the most likely outcome is a warning letter from the CAA. These are for last year, the stats. You've got an airspace infringement awareness course on, which is an online thing that you could be directed to take. There's also an online test, and then you get into the more severe things. So provisional suspensions. They could recommend some extra flight training, mandate that you need more navigation time before you get your license unsuspended. What was the word?
Well, I have a confession to make then.
It's getting recorded, Jonathan.
As Paul, I know. As Paul well knows, I infringed Luton airspace a few years ago. And I don't think I caught. I mean, I know some people have said Luton are nicer than Farmer, but I don't think I caught them on a very good day because the controller was particularly touchy with me. And sorry,
it wasn't either.
It was a male voice. It was a male voice, so it wasn't either of you guys. But apparently, I had to divert an aircraft or something, so it wasn't one of my better days. But they filed an MOR.
Oh right, yes, we would have to.
And I was taken off. Paul took me off solo flying and had to go back to some remedial work on navigation.
I clear in the interest of sharing, I infringed the Luton zone once. I was doing a slow flight exercise with a student in a Tomahawk, and the slow flight speed of these is 50 knots. and it was a howling gale from the north. And I could just see Letchworth starting to come. I was like, oh no. So I actually reversed the fixed wing into the Luton zone. That's my claim to fame.
Well done. You never told me that.
It was Jonathan Smith. I just went, oh, sorry. So I'm sorry, but there is an element of like, it's who you know.
I had a cab air end up in the Luton overhead. They were supposed to be going Cambridge to Cranfield. It was obviously quite a strong northerly wind. The instructor wasn't paying attention. It then transpired. I wasn't paying that much attention, should I say. And as this thing's now come trogging into the Luton zone, I've rung the tower. Have you got any outbounds? No. Can you ramp up the runway lighting? We've got somebody in the overhead. Oh yeah, I see him. You didn't see the runway lights go up. I think it was when the policeman offered to go and have a bit of a look-see. The police helicopter's now gone over. I don't know, Cab Air 03 Luton. Pass your message. Think of your overhead. Think you might be. So it's easily done. It is easily done.
My favourite one from many, many years ago. Do you remember Jackie White, Amanda?
Yes.
Over at the college, I think. So she's doing Luton radar, and someone calls her up lost. And she's sort of, one of the things, if you're trying to find someone who's lost, if they, they don't have, because we had some more basic equipment, you had to do some typing to get the squawks in those days. It was just, yeah. And the radars were steam driven. But she said to this chap, can you see anything out of the window? And he said, oh yeah, I can see a Concorde. So she thought, oh great, he's over Duxford. So she gives him a squawk and goes through all the rigmarole. And then all the phones from Heathrow obviously light up like a Christmas tree. What's your squawk doing in our overhead? No. Yeah, bless her. Yeah, it's a Concorde. Oh, it must be the one on static display at Duxford.
The LL departing off Luton. I think is he a 777, the cargo?
Yeah, yeah.
He's a big old beastie. And he was going off 26 as it was on a left turn to Clacton. As something has entered the Luton zone from the south, it transpired they were following the M1, thinking it was the M40.
Yeah.
They'd got their motorways mixed up.
Yeah.
Talking to me. So I've now hit the priority line to Luton Tower because the LL would normally go straight to London. And because they work on a different range and they weren't aware of this infringer, I couldn't let it go to London. So give it to me. Gave avoiding action as this poor woman, she transpired she was lost, ended up with the 777 going through at 12 o'clock. We had no height readout on her, and it was, oh God. We managed to get the LL away. Separation was lost, but it all ended well. She was talking to Farnborough, gave her a Farnborough squawk. Could you ask her nicely just to try and get out the zone when she can? Yeah, it transpired she was lost, I think, obviously quite low hours. And got the motorways mixed up.
The trouble is, all those rows look like thin grey stripes from above, and they all look the same.
I've not been much flying, so I know when I did, we're downwind, Amanda, where's the runway? I couldn't see it. So, yeah, it's not easy. So if anyone does come in, it's just a matter of be as nice as you can. There's no point shouting at someone. These things happen. We all make mistakes.
They're going to feel bad enough as it is. And, it's just not... Yeah.
And you can't exactly just pull over and stop. That's the thing. So I've known controllers tear a strip off people. You think, no, you don't. There's no call.
And plus, if you then go on to sort of, upset someone more, their flying will sort of degrade because they'll be worrying about other things, not concentrating on what they're doing. So it's just, it's not necessary.
No.
Anyone else for a question?
When you have a bad day, is it
bad day?
No, I don't know. Maybe a moody day. Is it affecting you? I don't know. Talking to people, maybe your tone of voice or your attention. Or...
Yeah, you possibly. I'm not really a morning person, so that's if I'm on an early start, then I'm possibly not at my best and most jolly until after several cups of coffee have been imbibed. So yeah, you can And also, if you're flying early, you'll probably tell the people who've been up all night on the night shift, because they'll sound a bit croaky and just
I normally say good night to the morning rotation as the first one goes upstairs. Good night. What do you mean?
What do you mean, good night? Yeah.
This is night time for me.
Yeah.
But apparently I still sound the same at 3 o'clock in the morning like I do about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So I'll always try and keep it light-hearted and fluffy and that kind of thing. I think just because I can. There's no, the last thing you want is a grumpy.
I've lost the ability to do that. I sound croaky if I feel bad.
Can I ask a question? With so many nationalities of pilots coming and going, do you have much trouble? I know they speak in English, but obviously broken English, etc. Do you have much trouble trying to hear what they're saying?
Not generally. I mean, that's the sort of the whole ethos behind sort of standard phraseology, is that everyone should be able to do that. You know, use the standard phrases. No, generally we might have to ask someone to sort of say again. I had a chap the other day, it was a GAAA 5, I think, and I just could not understand one of the numbers. It was flying on a American reg, so it was November, loads of numbers, and I just couldn't understand one of the ones he was saying. So in the end, I asked him twice, and I said, "I'm really sorry, I still haven't got it." I put it on speaker, and I had like 2 other people. For me personally, I find that pilots have a trouble between my 2s and 3s, so I do tend to use tree as per the you know, the phonetic, just because I found that stopped me having to repeat myself a lot of the time, because people have got it wrong or misunderstood me. So it's not always yeah, I mean, but you know, mostly I think I don't work them on my sectors, but I think some of the Chinese crews can be quite challenging with their English, but most people are good.
Had the China Southern on occasion into Stansted, but if I assume it's the FO getting it, or you can hear the captain shouting in the background, "That was flight level!" Oh my God, don't shout it! And you can hear it. You're thinking, "Oh no, I've got into trouble." But a lot of the time, we know what we're expecting to hear when they call inbound, like flight level, aircraft type, arrival information, and routing. So you know what you're expecting. I had a guy years ago. I said, "Maintain flight level 90." Went negative, we climb. I said, "Negative, you maintain." He then said TCAS. I went, "Okay, you climb, you climb." At that point, I then realised he had an RA against traffic climbing below. But when he just said he was climbing, I thought, no. But yeah, that can be a slight breakdown. And emergency situations, when it does get knocked, you need to listen out. That wasn't me. You need to listen.
Get nervous.
Oh yes, I was going to. Yeah, that's half the battle from our point of view. The pilots is trying to understand what is going to be said, and that's a lot of practice, isn't it? Some calls that I hear, I can only catch bits and pieces of it, but it's enough for me to piece it together and to understand. As long as I get the key information.
That's right, and it's one of those things. The more you hear, as Amanda says, you are kind of anticipating what you're going to hear next. So any errors do kind of sort of, you know, wave their hands at you, because you're kind of anticipating, right, he's going to do this, this, and this. So errors are quite evident usually.
And the squawks I've teach the students. You know, if you're talking to Luton 467, you can write that down. You've only got to remember the last number.
The last number, yeah.
Possible, isn't it? If you've got too many on, you need to change it to. Do you do 468 then? The last.
So it goes 7 with 467. So I had an evening when Farnborough were closed, and I ran out of squawks on Luton because we've only got 4670 to 4677.
Oh. Right.
And yeah, so and I had 11 or 12, I think, GA aircraft. Yeah, no, it's good fun.
I'd be under the desk by then hiding. No more.
Well, I'd moved in the strip that represented my next 2 IFR arrivals because I was sitting there doing nothing. So, oh, they're coming next. And then things started to call, and I ended up with 12 pink strips, which pushed my IFRs to, I don't know, somewhere off the screen. So I was then busy sort of trying to bin them to try and find where they'd gone.
It can snowball when one light aircraft gets a service and other people listen. Oh, he got transit. So then someone else calls and it opens the floodgate for everybody else. And then when I've had 3 or 4 wanting to transit, and you've got, say, 2 from the north, 2 from the south, you're now having to tell the tower about each aircraft. He's squawking this altitude, going to do this, I will keep and call traffic. And you have to do that with each one that wants to go within 3 miles of the airfield. So there's a phone call there. Then if you've got inbound traffic, you then have to hold it off. If you've got multiple aircraft looking for transit, you then have to call traffic to everybody and everybody else, tell the inbound about everybody, tell everybody about the inbound. And that's when it can really start to run away from you. So if someone says, no, I can't let you in, but you let him through, and him, it's because we've kind of reached our capacity of what we can take in safely.
Traffic information it grows exponentially. It's like coronavirus. It grows at x times x minus 1. So if I have 2 aircraft, it's just 2 pieces of traffic information. If I have 5 aircraft in the zone, I'm up to 20 pieces of traffic information to share with everyone. So it does, you know, like I say, letting that one extra one transit, you just be like, I haven't got time to tell you all about each other. You know. Sometimes in the at the weekends when London City's closed and we have all the pleasure flights going up and down the Thames, I have been known to go, right, there's one there, and there, there's another one there, and just do it like that. So, but it's not ideal, obviously.
That's right. Now, Helene, something I wanted to talk to you tonight, because I know you do have to disappear off.
Yes, I do at some point.
You need to go early, you just say so, don't you?
Oh, no. Yeah.
Being an RT oral examiner, do you want to talk a little bit about doing that RT oral, what to expect? Valerie, because you haven't done yours, so you're kind of, you might want to know what to expect from the test itself. I usually explain that generally you're sitting there with a headset on in a room with possibly a pencil and a paper, etc., and a box in front of you. You haven't actually got to fly.
No, you haven't got to fly. It's a simulated VFR flight. And for the moment, the CAA have created some imaginary routes with various little hoops to jump through. There are 3 different test scenarios, but it's basically the same things in a different order, if you like. So first up, and the way it runs is your examiner will sit in one room pretending to be all the different ground stations you're talking to, while you sit in the other room pretending to be the pilot flying around this imaginary route, and we just kind of chat backwards and forwards. I run it through 2 computers, so we have a headset on the computer and a little moving map that jinks around the same route that you have been briefed on, of course, and you just make the appropriate radio calls to me at the appropriate time, and I'll pretend to be the different people you're talking to. So generally you'll depart from one kind of category of airfield, if you like. None of them involve radio, so it'll either be a FISO or ATC. On one of the exams, the ATC is just in an ATZ, so a bit like coming out of Cranfield. And in another scenario, it's in a control zone, so it's a little bit more like Bournemouth or somewhere like that. At some point, you'll be asked to transit through a MAT. So that's obviously got its own request penetration and meant to be sort of 15 miles from the MAT's boundary when you call for that. If you haven't departed from the airfield in controlled airspace, there will be a controlled airspace transit somewhere through the route as well, and you will end up joining at kind of the opposite from the one you departed from. So if you departed from a FISO airfield, you'll be asked to arrive at an ATC one. And if you departed from the ATC, you'll arrive at a FISO airfield. So the whole land at your discretion, all that sort of thing at the end. And there's then somewhere in the middle, one is scripted and one's a surprise. There will be a couple of emergencies. So, and possibly unsurprisingly, one will be a PAN call and one will be a Mayday. And so basically there's some way on the test equipment being used to indicate that an event has happened. When my equipment goes a bit peculiar, I sometimes just come over the radio and go, the engine's failed now, and sort of get people to do it. But you'll be alerted to an event happening if it's not scripted, and you will be expected to launch into the appropriate call, be it a PAN or a Mayday. The person receiving it will behave in the normal way. So the RT loading, if it's just a PAN, we just go Roger PAN, and let you let you deal with it. If it's a Mayday, we may go on to impose radio silence, and that's the way I run the test. I go through, so at least you hear what might happen. So so I would impose radio silence on everyone else on the frequency that we're tending to use. And then once all that's been done, you're the light is pinged out to indicate the emergency is over, and you would be expected to use the appropriate phrase, cancel Mayday or cancel PAN, and just carry on. So yeah, your examiner will brief you, will sort of go through the route with you, and the instructions as to what you're expected to do, and you're given lots of time to ask questions. You know, what will happen here? What do I do if, you know? So they should give you lots of time to ask you questions, and then you get sort of 15-20 minutes to sit and prepare. Maybe lots of people write themselves a little kind of order of service. You know, I'm going to call them, and here I'm going to call them, and this sort of thing. And then we just, as I say, we just chat backwards and forwards through the route, which it runs at your the candidate's speed. So some people whiz through it in 20 minutes. Some people, I have over the road here, there's a little airfield where I do these, and I'm in the workshop, and the classrooms above. I have sort of banged on the ceiling just to make sure they're still alive on occasions, because it was taking quite a long time. You're right up there. Yeah. So yeah, but it runs at your pace, as long as it doesn't take longer than, I think it's an hour and a half, because then I've generally lost interest. No, that's how long the CAA is. But yeah, most people find it quite fun, actually, because it's a chance to practice these things and some of the more unusual RT procedures without having to worry about, you know, holding your heading and height and all that sort of thing. So it's, most people end up quite enjoying it, I find.
But at the end, do you explain what they've done wrong, if they have done anything wrong?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's a debrief at the end. Yeah, if there's, hopefully they've not done anything, you know, too wrong. I find that people just don't, you know, you could have done this in a different way, or this could have been done a little bit better. But, you know, so it's generally some helpful advice as to where to go next, any particular areas that will need a bit more concentration or a bit more practice.
Do you find many people fail at all, Helena?
Sorry, say again?
Do you have many failures?
No, I would say about, I'm quite generous, I reckon about 97% of people that have taken tests, and the main thing is they're ready to do it. So it's not, you know, they're not, they've sort of been through the a good training program, and they're ready and they know what they're doing. Is the I see. It's only when I've had a couple of people call up out of the blue, so not from schools that I generally work with, and they've not been quite well enough prepared to be in the test scenario kind of thing.
Because the students sometimes, when I say about it, they look a little daunted. I say, I talk through very similar to what you've done there. So, but you've got to remember, you know, you're here at Elstree. This is Flight Information Service, and the chances are, unless we specifically go to somewhere like Cranford, they've never had to fly in and out of ATC.
Yeah.
Not a requirement on the syllabus to actually go and physically do that. It can just be a discussion.
Yeah, absolutely. And I say it's a good chance to practice.
There was a question I was going to ask actually, is because someone like me, I haven't flown for, well, I certainly haven't done the radio for at least a year.
Right.
And that means I haven't done my RT exam for 2 years nearly.
Right.
Well, maybe a year and a half. But I mean, you know, it's only ever once in your lifetime, but there is
absolutely
the opportunity to forget. So I mean, do you do a refresher, or is it a kind of?
I have been asked to. Yeah, it tends to be on a sort of an ad hoc kind of one-to-one basis, that someone has returned to flying after some time and, you know, wants a quick catch up as to what's changed, that kind of thing. But no, it was some, you know, something that's fairly easily organised. Yeah.
I was about to say I didn't even realise the 7,000 had changed, so I've only just learned that.
Yeah, but you know, Amanda and I, that, you know, the phraseology is our bread and butter, and they sort of flag up changes to us. It's most, I think the worst offenders possibly are the you know, the people who share an aircraft. It's based at a little farm strip somewhere, and there's no sort of culture of checking these things. I mean, it wasn't too long ago that I had someone call up for a flight information service, and you know, when did that change? You know, 15 years ago. And the thing is, if you are using kind of older phraseology, it does put a question in the controller's mind, or how current is this person? You know, and so we might just, you know, keep a little bit of a closer eye.
But John, you won't have forgotten the basics at the end of the day. You might not always say things in exactly the right sequence, but you can certainly, I don't think get by is quite the right word, but I don't think you'd have a problem, that's for sure. But like Lane says, you can always just have a little brush up session. It's not a major problem. It is always the pilot's responsibility to keep up with anything to do with changes in procedures and legislations, etc. And that isn't easy. The Skywise app is quite useful. That highlights a lot of different changes that have been happening in aviation. But yeah, the students, you know, when we sort of talk about flying in and out of somewhere that's got ATC taxiways, because we have none of that here. For instance, you don't have to adhere to any taxiways. It's handy if they've done a Latuke trip, because you deal with all that at Latuke, but otherwise they've not been exposed to it. So that's what I was just curious as to how many struggle on the RT oral. But as you rightly say, they haven't actually got to fly the aircraft, so you can.
No, I think you know, just having that, you know, there's rather than, you know, I say there's probably you know, only a handful that I've actually failed. There's a couple of them that have clearly not been ready, and I've said, let's just stop this now, go away, look at this, you know, and we've done a bit of ground school and just, you know, some scenarios, chatting backwards and forwards, and then we've had another go. So I, you know, personally, rather than I would rather sort of just say, you know, I think you need a bit more time to prepare for this. Let's call a halt and go away, read the book.
As a part
I'm going to get a sale. I'm sorry.
As a part of the informal practice leading up to doing an RT exam, is there any easy way of listening into RT without having a specialist aviation band radio?
I don't know, sit in the sit in the helicopter and tune into. Can you get it on the ground from Elstree? I'm not sure, but you know that's.
There isn't a live feed on the internet or anything.
Oh, bless.
Yeah,
Someone's asking what the book's called.
You've got
Yes,
live
please, I'd like
ATC.
to know.
Yeah,
So
live
there are.
ATC.
Oh, and
Yeah, Radio Communications Manual.
The live ATC, is that UK or is that?
I think that's American.
No, it's worldwide. I used it a lot when I was in Australia, and right now I'm in Canada, and I use it as well again. And even, you know, I tried from here to listen up to French radios, and it does work. And well, to be honest, I tried also in for Elstree, and from here, like, hello, I am in Montreal. Yeah, you can put anything like mine. Here is 118.4, and actually what you see is Montreal, but others worldwide. So it's pretty useful.
Oh, I didn't know that.
No,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
didn't know that.
really. You know, it's like I'm French, and I learned that in the UK and in Australia, and I was really struggling with that. Like, you know, I need to talk to the radio, but like there is so many people who listen to me, and if I do a mistake, like I'm reading, it's oh,
Stage fright, isn't it?
but yeah, it is frightening at the beginning, but you definitely get used to. And you know, I'm pretty sure that in the UK, or I know that in the UK, you've got plenty of accent, also in America, also in Australia, and you just need to get used to and listening to it. That's what you said. It's always or mostly the case of hearing the same phraseology, and you'll get it, and then you keep talking, and you eventually you make mistakes, but it doesn't matter as long as you understand and you are understood.
That's amazing.
I'm still making mistakes in English and in plain English, and you know, you still can understand me.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, we all do. I mean, you know, yesterday I had to go, disregard, I'm starting again because I, you know, just tripped over my tongue and it was just nonsense. So I said, right, disregard, this is what I really want to say.
We have it easy, really, because English is our native language.
I know, we get away with it very easily, don't we?
I've taught the students that the bottom line is get the message across clear and concise and with no confusion. Just don't cause confusion.
Yeah, at the end of the day. I mean, we were saying earlier about our RT samples, that's one of the things that we're asked to look at. Is someone using the standard phraseology? Yes. If they do deviate from that, is it clear? And you know, to ensure that they haven't introduced any ambiguity in what they've said. So that's the key thing. As long as it's clear and easily understood, that's fine.
Yeah, I think that probably what comes across on the RT oral test, isn't it? At the end of the day, it's not necessarily the perfect wording. It's have they understood the procedures and got the message across.
Yes, absolutely. One thing I will say is the format of the RT test is changing at some point. It was meant to be this year, but with all that's gone on, I haven't heard any more about it. And rather than the CAA prescribed routes, what they're going to be looking for is for the examiner to give the student a route away from their home base. So it won't be, oh, take me through the Luton zone, you know, or anything super familiar like that. But it should encompass all the same kind of elements is what we're being told. That so I'm sure everyone will develop their pet routes that happens to have a maps on it, that happens to take you through some controlled airspace, and you know, it will be very similar in sort of content to what we do at the moment. But they're looking to do away with the simulation aspect, so it will more be a tabletop chat what are you going to do here? What would you say to me in this scenario? So it's sort of coming, but I don't know. I don't know when now. It was meant to be this year somewhere, but I doubt that will happen.
Oh, that's interesting. So more like an open oral exam rather than, as you say,
Yeah. Yeah. Because I was saying, you know, that they were that I think they need to sort of look. There are so many pilot-initiated transponder actions now, like the frequency monitoring codes and things like that. That you know, that should be sort of things should be included as well. And so, if we're given a little bit more leeway as the examiner, then we can obviously discuss things like that. So, you know, what are your squawk options in this area? Who would you, you know, what would you select? What frequency would you use?
Nice.
So, yeah, so it could be quite make it a bit more interesting for me, because I don't know how many times I've been Colston Tower and call ball approach. It's like, oh no, this again, yeah. So it could make it a bit more fun for the examiner to be a bit more creative. So
yeah, that's a good idea, I think, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. Because I've been saying the same thing since. I think the date on the thing is 2004. You know, they haven't even given me a new map for CA 824. So, you know, it's due a bit of a makeover, the whole process.
That would make sense, as say, rather than just having one course of action, you can discuss the various options or courses of actions for that particular.
Yeah, absolutely, and you can sort of bring in all sorts of things. So yeah, it could be fun.
It's interesting.
Excuse me, the battery is about to die, so I'm going to leave. But thank you very much for this evening.
Thank you, Amanda.
I'll speak to you on the
Amanda.
See you next
Bye.
week.
Take care. Bye. Thanks very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Amanda.
Bye.
See you later. Bye.
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 I just wanted to ask about the validity of the RT exam. I assume it's European wide or even further. Is that correct?
Well, it's a UK specific thing, the RT exams. So, and I think it's what they're going to be doing with it after in a couple of months' time. Well, for UK licenses, obviously we'll still have them, but for people training for EASA licenses, I've not been briefed on what will happen for those. I think there'll still be some sort of test to take place. It's all a little bit nebulous at the moment as to how we're going to interact with EASA, whether we're still going to be part of it, and I don't know. So
nothing clearly about that, is there, at the moment?
No, and it's getting to the stage where we really should be told.
I've taken the view of it's taken us 20 years to sort of get close to being aligned with the ARSA. I don't suppose it's going to be all unknitted in the space of 1 month.
Well, I had to renew my my fixed wing CPL a little while ago, so I got an EASA one and the UK one. So I was just in
case.
All this around. But I think if you're thinking of changing your state of registry, you need to a medical from that country, or your UK medical translated into. Because I was looking at getting Belgium as my state of registry for my EASA one. I'm not sure if I can do it yet. I'm still working my way through the legislation.
Yeah, they had said about you need to apply for that sooner rather than later.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
You need to get translated into 3 languages if it's Belgium.
So, yes, exactly. Yeah, well, they will. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, you can still convert your license as you always have done if necessary, isn't there?
Yeah.
Going from America to the UK to America, there are always routes around that as required.
Absolutely. I think it's just a bit, so no one can really plan what to do at the moment because, who knows what's going on. That we'll see.
Anybody else got a question? All right. Well, in that case, I guess we'll wrap it up. Let Helena get to you're off to work, aren't you?
Yes, yes, I get to go to work now and do all that.
What can you do then?
What did I say? Yeah, no, it's so we this will be my last duty this week. So we do 2 early starts, which, as I've already said, I don't really enjoy getting out of bed at 5 o'clock in the morning. It doesn't fill me with and then we'll rotate on 2 afternoon duties from 2 o'clock through till 10 in the evening, and then we follow that with 2 nights from 10 o'clock until 7 tomorrow morning.
So your night's tonight?
Yeah, yeah.
Lucky you.
Well, we do get to, well, because it's even quieter than it has been, we 2 people are allocated for the night for each airport, so we split it in half. So I'll go in, work for an hour, go and have a lie down in a dark room. I may or may not sleep. We've got these little cells, is the best word for them. They've got a sort of bed and a bedside table. It's quite stark, you know. Take your sleeping bag in and try and rest for a couple of hours. And then I'll get up at 2:30, and my colleague can go and lie down for a few hours. Yeah.
Apologies, I was a bit late. Could you just remind me, Helena, where are you based and what are you covering tonight?
I'm at Swanwick, and I do Thames, Luton, and Heathrow special. My little bits of the world.
You expect it to be quiet tonight, I assume, do you?
Sorry, second?
You expect it to be fairly quiet tonight, do you?
I worked a second half again last night, and I didn't actually have to put my headset on once.
Not at all?
Not at all, no. It was, I mean, normally at this time of year there'd be, I mean, it wouldn't be super busy anyway, but there'd be, you know, a dozen or so trickling in during my sort of 3-hour stint, but there's nothing. I read an awful lot of my books last night.
I was just going to say, while you're on duty, what are you allowed to do whilst?
Well, at night we can read. Some people watch movies.
Oh, okay.
I think there's sort of a Netflix challenge who can see the most movies on the night duty. That, you know, some people play games, obviously, on their pads and things. But yeah, no, I've just finished a degree in astronomy, which I was doing to keep me busy on night duties. So, you know, I've always found it quite easy to study at night. So it seemed like a good idea. So.
I imagine just sitting while you had to stare at the screens relentlessly without moving away from them.
That's it. So during the day, obviously, distraction becomes more of an issue. So
I wish you were in an actual control tower at night then, because you could just stare at the stars while you're waiting for a plane to come and land.
It's hard getting them to turn the apron floodlights off, though. So the light pollution is a bit.
That's annoying, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. It's a big flood. So I want to look at the stars. Yeah.
Helena, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for listening to me drone on for.
It's very interesting. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much.
Well, like I say, thank you for listening. I shall disappear now and leave you to it.
Have a good evening, and it's made all the difference having a real air traffic controller speaking to us.
A live one, I know. Yeah.
Lecture. Yes, indeed.
You had two for the price of one this evening.
Thanks again.
You do have to finish it
Pleasure.
properly,
Lovely
you
to see
realise
you all. Good night.
that.
Night.
Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Cheerio.